So Ward, you did a good job with your new computer. Not too
My
much.
first time on my new laptop.
Yeah, that was very good, and you did it well. And the only thing was we couldn't see your mouse movements, so that was weird.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, we'll take care of that for next time.
I
All right.
could use the laser pointer. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay, I could always do that. Had I known, I would have.
Okay, Jim, go for it. Can you unmute?
I just was interested in the fact that one of the lectures earlier, Bob had talked about creation being a circle and the infinite being a straight line.
Yeah.
And of course, the circle under here in figure 24, he uses a circle to come back again to the Ohm point. And that circle is the evolutionary circle. I just thought how that fit so nicely in with that former lecture.
That's true, and I hadn't thought of that. And it, of course, relates the form of that diagram, as I mentioned. Yeah, this is the one you're talking, the diagram showing the straight and the circular. But the form of that corresponds to this, with opposites almost matching. And notice that stone and human are opposites in the sense, infinite intelligence, Baba repeats this many times. Stone is has almost no egotism. Hopana is the word he uses. It's free of egotism, but it also has no consciousness. Human beings have infinite consciousness, but also infinite egotism. So notice how both of them are very close to God in their own ways. The stone form has just emerged out of God and is actually extremely close to God. And the human form has reached the point where it can become conscious of God if it can just get rid of its hopana, its egotism. So they're actually opposites, but close to each other.
Very good. Thank you, Jim.
Yeah.
Luna. Jay Baba.
I had a few questions. So I joined in a kind of late, but I remember on one of my trips to Mehrabad at the museum, there were these beautiful, detailed paintings that Baba had commissioned, I think a foreigner lady to do, which showed about evolution and the species.
Rano Gailey.
Yeah, were you referring to that earlier when we just read it like a while ago about the evolution from animals to thing?
Yeah, no, I haven't been making reference to it because we have so much on our plate already with the diagrams from this very book. But as the study of this book progresses, it would be the natural way to go to bring in those diagrams and many others from other books, actually.
Okay.
Baba's discourses are very rich in their use of diagrams.
Yeah, I did meet Nadia and I saw some of these. It was really nice.
What's that?
I said I did meet Nadia at Mehrabad and I saw some of these, so it was really nice to see it here and there. And I wanted to ask you, are you going to have like a digital version of your book as well and an audio book with this book?
Well, there is an audio version of it.
Okay.
Half of it already in this very series as an audiobook. We've been reading it. Yeah, maybe there could be in the future. There is, some people are going to prepare a 10-minute video, hopefully to coincide with the release of this. And there is going to be a 7-day program at Mehrabad on it. But yeah, no, this is, I mean, a book like this just invites. This book is particularly exotic, isn't it? It's got all these catchy things. I mean, these explanations, which are so succinct and so provocative, and it's got these wonderful figures, and there's this fantastic history behind it all. It's kind of unbeatable as a combination of those things. So I'm sure there'll be lots of stuff. So far, we've had enough to do just to get this book out, and now to get these presentations, which Cassandra has been central to organizing.
Thank you.
Ellen Van Allen.
Just an observation about the circle versus the straight line. My understanding is that current contemporary physics sees space as curved. So if you continue a straight line long enough, it is a circle within this creation.
Mm-hmm.
Just a fun thought.
Yeah.
It is.
You see how these same themes that Baba introduces keep coming up? You know, as you get to know this book better, it's very integrated and very rich.
Definitely.
And it becomes a circle because it goes back and becomes close to where it began.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Anything else, Ellen?
No, that was all. It just struck me so much. I thought I'd share it.
You'll
Yeah.
think of something else. Luftwehr. I'm not sure how to pronounce your. Yeah, go ahead and unmute, please.
You're muted.
There you go. Oh,
Okay.
try again.
I'm just wondering, can you hear me?
Yes.
How can infinite egotism be very close to God? I would
Well,
have thought the opposite.
Yeah, no, it's very close in that it hosts infinite consciousness or infinite awareness. It's through the accumulation of all those sanskaras that consciousness increased to the infinite degree. But the egotism is the thing that stands in the way. It's those clouds that we saw in that figure.
Okay, thank you.
So you have to become a conscious stone. Baba says that many times in Infinite Intelligence. Stone is almost free of egotism. The only problem is it doesn't have consciousness. So you need to bring, a perfect master is like a human stone with
Wow.
infinite consciousness, but no egotism.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Yeah, you know, I was thinking about what you just said, Ward. It's the same thing that Baba says that I never really understood before about you have to be awake while you're sound asleep. It's the exact same thing. You have to have that
Right.
full consciousness, but without those sanskaras.
Right.
And that I can finally understand the reversal of light and dark in that context.
Yeah.
Because really, when you're talking about the beyond state, it was a void. And it was that, is it Sarvagna or Sarvasna in that page 132, and the nothing and the everything, when the unconscious God becomes the conscious God, it's the same kind of thing. And that when you're in that final state, when you have the Sadguru or the avatar, they have transversed that and come back to that total knowledge or total awareness of complete consciousness, but without the other. Anyway, it was interesting. And I'm so glad you made that comment because it reinforced what I was thinking. I wasn't sure, but this whole dream into the vacant dream and being awake while you're sound asleep, I mean, it's actually starting to make a little bit of sense. I was wondering if you would go over again the turnings and the unfoldings, that particular figure. It was early on in your lecture.
This one?
I'm not sure it's that one. Yeah, I guess it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is the talk in which Baba seems to have explained the 5 turns. And you know, you get what turns are, right? That is the human form making very like somersaulting movements through the course of evolution, and there are 5 of them. You'll find this right in the chapter, The 10 States of God, in God Speaks, which Erich wrote. And actually, Erich got it from Ghani's draft, which he wrote in the late 40s. And Ghani got it from Ramju's booklet, and Ramju got it from this. So this is actually the source of what you'll find in God Speaks on that topic. And as I say, unfortunately, it got garbled. I've studied this very closely, and if you read the appendix, you'll see all of this gets covered. It's not really clear what some of these turns are, particularly the 3rd and the 4th. But Nadia and I made our best guesses here. But you can say that in the first, before it starts stone, the human form is completely folded up on itself. I mean, Baba illustrated it with this rag doll, which he folded all up. And I'm sure Baba would have done a great job of making it look like a stone. And the vegetative forms are upside down. That makes sense, right? So it's got a vertical posture, but it's an upside down vertical posture. The second turn to worm, I have to say, is a bit counterintuitive to me, but our text kept insisting that a worm's eyes are, the direction of the eyes seems to be important, the direction of the gaze, and its face is turned up. Now, when I look at a snake, I would have thought the opposite. I would have thought it's on its belly. Anyway, that's what our text says. And then, yeah, go ahead.
So why is it that you see those golden things, which I think is, I don't know what they are. Some circles have gold in them and some are black. So for example, where you come to bird,
Yeah.
you see, so I understand that the crab is probably the Barzak. The transitional species that faces first the fish and then faces the bird, so it can go both ways. So there's the flip of the focus, just like with the red hat, the flip of the red hat, just like the flip of the consciousness outward to inward. I see how all that relates. But then he's got the bird, but he's got waterfowl on the inside. Then you've got another point, and the turkey, which I think you said was the Barzak between bird and animal, right?
Yeah.
So why is there no yellow or golden area for the bird? There's just 2 small dots rather than.
Yeah. Well, we used those orange golden circles to mark the end of a turn. So stone to vegetable is the first turn complete. Vegetable to worm is the second turn complete. Worm to fish, the third. Fish to animal is the 4th turn complete. It's not the 7 kingdoms of evolution being marked, it's the 5 turns.
Oh, that's interesting.
This is just
Wow.
our diagram. You know, there are many references to a diagram in the text, but nobody ever drew it. So we just made our own best guess.
Then
So
what
the
are
gold,
black
the gold dots are turns completed.
Yeah, yeah.
I see.
Then what are the
Okay.
black dots?
Those were we just added those in as significant forms that got mentioned by Baba, like metal form he mentions, or you see the crab form is apparently one of those transitional species, the last of the fish forms. And by the way, this is new information, some of these transitional species, which sometimes get called Barzaks in our Baba culture. We didn't know about the crab had that role, or that little tiny green insect that he mentioned in that talk as the first worm form. or bird. It begins with waterfowl, and because of its connection with the water. And the last one is something that sounds like a turkey. The first animal form is a kangaroo, and the last is a monkey. So we just put these in as significant forms, which Baba mentioned in the course of this lecture.
And then one more thing. So after the animal you form, you've got the kangaroo, which I thought was a Barzak. Then he's got a dog in there, and then you've got a big black dog. That, I guess, is the monkey.
Yeah.
And which is the almost human. And then the yellow again is the human, and it's the opposite, but the closest to the stone.
Right.
I presume in terms of losing sanskaras and becoming God consciousness without sanskaras, and therefore similar to stone in that way and closest to God in the beyond state. Do I have that kind of right?
That's right. That matches this diagram here. So we use this as this one we had a source for, as I showed you before, this source down here. In fact, there are a bunch of other sources in later publications. But since we didn't have a source for this, we used that diagram as the basic framing for this one.
I'm sorry, which diagram for the framing of which one?
This diagram here, which
24.
Yeah, which as you can see, we had sources for. So coming up with this diagram where there were no sources, we use that as the basic framework for it. But
So
we put in the doll, and we put in a bunch of points for the terns and various other species.
So it sounds like the eyes are similar to the whole issue of focus and the red cap and the turns here. And one more final question about this. The worm, I didn't understand how the worm has its eyes up, because when I look at a worm, I thought the eyes were down.
I know. All I
Lord
can
said
say is
earlier.
that's what our text said.
And then the green insect comes to mind, the green caterpillar.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you.
There's a kind of a class of insects, I think they're called phasmids. Is that right? I'm forgetting. That look like parts of a plant. So it makes me think that those might be some of the earliest, after vegetative forms, the earliest forms might be phasmids. That's not Baba saying that, it just occurs to me.
Okay, Ward, I have some questions about I think it was in lecture 2, where Baba talks about action being necessary on the gross level. Do you think you can find that section?
Yeah, understand Scaras. Yeah. Here we have action.
Yeah, the topic of actions.
Yeah.
It says here in this stage, when sanskaras have emerged in the form of thoughts and desires, the mind should be checked. This notion of action strikes me as really significant in 2 ways. One is that, you have a thought, you might have an impulse, until it becomes an action, or until you take some action, it seems to me it isn't fully manifested.
Yeah.
So there's no
natural progress is to come down to the gross plane. So if you don't put it into action, it remains on the subtle.
Yeah, and I think that's important.
Even just allowing such sanskaras to emerge in the mind does create new sanskaras, but they're much less binding. They're much lighter and less binding.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to, my idea of that is that it is important to do some actions which anchor into manifestation your true self and what you truly believe in. To me, the significant point is that your actions should match your heart. And that makes a big difference. I'm thinking about a very dear friend of mine who is getting ready to move. And I'm encouraging her to take action in the sense of going and looking at places, because action really does stimulate manifestation. In the reverse, though, as you want to withdraw from the gross world, you're trying to stop those actions that keep you linked to the things that you no longer want in your life. So getting rid of stuff is an action that helps to bring you back into a more subtle and eventually a more mental state.
That's right.
That's my theory.
You know, this is the one lecture where Baba really got into this topic. If you check out like God Speaks or the booklet Divine Theme, which was kind of like a prototype for God Speaks in some ways, Baba brings up the topic of sanskaras right at the start. It's very foundational. And in Tiffin lectures, Baba explicitly says that sanskaras are the foundation of his entire teaching. But that hasn't really been the case here. So it really took him, I mean, he mentioned them a little bit earlier, but it really took until this talk, so the sanskaras theory, for Baba really to put sanskaras on center stage. And having explained it here, he's kind of going to go on to other things. So again, I keep thinking, and you know, dealing with sanskaras and the elimination of sanskaras and the binding of sanskaras, that topic is dealt with in this early material hugely in Infinite Intelligence. For those of you who have read it, it's like really, really central, especially that big chapter 11 and earlier. And of course, God Speaks and everywhere else you see it. But it's really the soul bound in reincarnation that has to start to deal with that. How do I get rid of my damn sanskaras? And I noticed that with these boys, he brought it up, but did not focus on it in the same way, although he does for this one lecture, but by and large, he didn't. And when he got to the topic of reincarnation here, you'll see it's just very, very brief. He says almost nothing. And I keep thinking, so this version of the Divine Theme, we're kind of seeing the Divine Theme in the series of lectures, right? Haven't been harping on that, but maybe you could see how that's been from creation through, he threw in astronomy also, but evolution, and then involution is going to come up. But he did not focus on those things. And I think the reason is his work with these boys was to get them to turn from the gross sphere to the inner worlds, because he wanted to precipitate them onto the planes. So he didn't give much emphasis to these themes, which he usually did emphasize.
Well, the interesting thing is that even though he's not emphasizing, he's giving some profound points here.
Oh, he is here.
Yeah. So if you go to the page, let's see where it says right there. Hold on. Where's the page? That page where it says now. Go down further.
Now for the mind to revert.
No, what page are you on there? I lost my place. I think it's by 27.
Okay, this is page 211. We're right opposite the key to 27.
It says something about now, as the sanskaras are erased, mind still needs something.
Oh, yeah. Where is that?
I think it's.
It was the mind needs to be reversed, and it can only be reversed by the Sadguru. That was the point.
Yeah.
Because we can't do it ourselves.
Right. Yeah, notice how quickly Baba gets to that theme.
I love when he says, "So, dear chaps."
Yeah.
Always keeping in mind
that British culture in colonial India still.
It's so endearing the way he says it. I can hear his accent.
Yeah.
Anyway, the only other point I wanted to say real quickly is, it's interesting with the numbers that add up to 106.
Mm,
They're all factors of the 7 family, but 106 also translates to 7 in numerology.
that's right. Yeah.
1 and 6 is 7. Okay, let's see who's next. Mona.
Actually, I was
Oh,
just going
I'm
to
sorry, Mona. Go ahead.
I was going to say the same thing. 106 is 1 plus 6 is 7. That was
Yeah.
1. And I wanted to know that there was a mention about Masaji. Is he
Yeah.
still alive? Because met somebody, I heard of somebody called Masaji this trip.
He died in like 1944, maybe something like that.
All right.
He was an older man. He was really one of the one and only really that I can think of older men among Baba's Mandali. Most of them were Baba's age or younger. He's definitely older.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mona. Cheryl. Jai Baba.
Hey, Baba. Ward, could you address the issue of comparing, contrasting the 7 kingdoms versus the 5 turns?
Yeah. I would really recommend, when the book is available to you, reading the appendix on this, because there's a lot on that. But it seems that the 5 turns and the 7 kingdoms are separate from each other, that the human form goes through these 5 turns through the course of evolving through the 7 kingdoms. They're not directly related. One of the real problems is that the 3rd and 4th turns are very garbled in all of the original accounts, and every version based on it later on, like Ramju's book, Philosophy and Teachings of Meher Baba, or Ghani's rewrite of that in the Meher Baba Journal. Or, here's an interesting thing. In the late 40s, Baba wanted to do a major dictation to, Dr. Ghani, right? He's probably the one who Baba most liked to discuss things with. And Baba wanted to dictate to him a major book. And then after the New Life, when Ghani had died, Baba dictated it to Erich, God Speaks. Now I've lost my train of thought while he was, what was your question again?
Well,
the kingdom.
Correlate the 7 kingdoms with the 5 turns.
Yeah, there are about 3 or 4 pages Ghani wrote on a lot of these matters. And then he crossed it all out in pencil. And he wrote then, and this, you'll find a version of this right in God Speaks, actually. The details of this are extremely complicated. But since Baba says he's dealt with all of it in detail in his book, we will leave it to the book to explain them there. And I think part of the reason Ghani did that was because reading through all of that material, he could see some of the contradictions that were there, some of the confusions, and he thought it'd be better just to cut it all out, even though it had already been there in previous versions of this in the Meher Baba Journal and in Ramju's book. We just didn't have any Mandali who were really interested in evolutionary biology or anything like that, because they could have raised these questions much earlier.
And Ward, can you please stop sitting on the book?
Yeah, I wonder when it will come out. Yeah.
Well, we have all we can handle right now with creation and its causes.
Yeah, no, this is a lot.
Elizabeth, was there anything else, Cheryl?
No, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yeah, so I did have a question way back. I just wondered if you think the sobbing that the kids were going through might be related to the very fast removal of sanskaras. that releasing just the rapid release of sanskaras, and causes which might have led to Baba eventually stopping because he was worried about the health of one of the students.
Yeah.
Bless you, by the way.
Could be. I mean, Baba seems like he was engaged in a work of precipitating a lot of these kids into higher experience of the planes. And notice that before and after, Baba never did that. He wouldn't give people experiences. But it seems to have been his very work and his very purpose with these boys to give them experience of the planes. Most unusual phase of his work. So a lot of this seems to have been that. So when he gets to this topic, he does give us a good coverage of sanskaras and actions and sanskaras and the subtle and the gross and what you have to do to get free of sanskaras. Though it's brief, it's a very good explanation. But immediately he gets to, how do you do this? You have to turn by means of the Sadguru. He goes right to that.
And he also talks about love being the means by which you turn. And I actually can see that. If you have enough love, that means you have enough faith to do whatever, which means ability to drop whatever things that are tying you to whatever makes up your existence or your ego. And of course, that's really hard because I think it's after, I think that when we come to movement, I think we start entering this phase of survival. Baba mentions the evolutionary phase at which survival becomes important. And I think it's instinct, and it's very hard to get rid of that instinct to want to preserve ourselves.
Yeah. So here again, in most of the lectures, some of them he hasn't said, create love for me. Here he does. But even when he doesn't say create love for me, he usually at the end of the lectures comes to the point that you have to turn to the higher in one way or another. Here he's done it very explicitly. You need to love me, which means to think of me. And to think of me means not to think of yourself at all. So he always redirects towards that at the end of these lectures.
Can you go back a page, earlier a page? I still am looking for that. There's a paragraph in that discussion. Oh, there it is. There it is. There where it says, now, if these sanskars are wiped off.
Yeah, there we go. That's it. Yeah.
That's the one. The mind must needs still see something. Why? Because when the mind does so many things in the gross and subtle mediums, necessarily it must do something when it is divested of them.
That's right.
I don't get that.
Well, the idea is in other words, you've got consciousness, and consciousness has got to be conscious of something. So what is going to be conscious of? God. Once you divest yourself of the gross and the subtle obsessions, so your sanskaras, you're going to turn towards God.
Okay.
I think he's talking about the activity of consciousness there.
Yeah. And he's talking about completely turning away from, or complete wiping out of sanskars. Okay.
That's what I think.
Jim Wilson.
I was interested in this idea that in order to have a thought or a desire, there has to be a sanskara for that. So if I am thinking that I want to love God more, I want to be a good person, to have that thought, I had to have a sanskara that allowed me to have that thought.
Yeah.
So where is free will?
That's $1 billion question. We should have a whole separate discussion just on that all by itself.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about at Mayorana, Jim.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's actually a topic that's going to come up there.
Yeah.
But in the talks to the Mandali, in the next section of this book, which we're not getting to in these readings, we're just Baba's talks to boys. Baba does talk about the sanskaras you acquire through your connection with the master and through love for God. And he does say those sanskaras never leave once you acquire them. They're
Hmm.
permanent. That's something new. They're like part of your permanent assets.
Hmm.
I think that's what Don Stevens used to refer to as the gold nugget.
Yeah, it was
Your
like that.
individuality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So
would
it-
you repeat that word, what you just said? I missed some of it. Could you repeat what you just said?
That sanskaras acquired through love for God or love or in service of the master, those sanskaras are permanent. They remain with you forever. Those impressions. We'll get that, well, when you get the book, it'll be there. That
So is
talk
that-
to the
Do we
monthly.
find that in the book? Is that source of what you just said in?
Yeah, I'm referring to the next section of this very book.
Okay, thank you.
There's one of those talks to the Mandali has a lot more about sanskaras.
I would like to add an observation, if it's okay.
Mm.
All of these wonderful lectures that are available to us now, I'm thinking about how in the Tiffin lectures and talks in the West and various Sahavas lectures and lectures to the boys and many early talks that overall, like in God's hands, in God's own hand,
Yeah.
that there's this tremendous accumulation of kind of not so much isolated, but individuated ideas that Baba is bringing forth. Reminds me a little bit of, there was an artist at the college I went to who was a famous sculptor, world-renowned sculptor, Ivan Mestrovic. And he escaped the Second World War and came to the United States and so on. And in his studio, there would be little statuettes, a bunch of little things that he'd be working on. And what he was doing was trying to perfect an idea for a masterpiece. And around campus, he had numerous masterpieces. The one well-known was a Pietà at the cathedral and a wonderful woman at the well scene in the life of Christ, masterpieces. But it was interesting to see how his mind was working and putting together these little statuettes that were kind of going to eventually be involved in a major masterpiece. And that's kind of how I see a lot of what we're dealing with, is that the masterpiece, of course, being God Speaks. And once you really read in God Speaks and get really familiar with it, you see how all of these little pieces that we are discussing now,
Right.
Baba has been creating a whole atmosphere for his final masterpiece. And it just gives such a wonderful glow to God Speaks. All of this just is amazing.
Thank you, Jim.
Isn't it interesting with these early, we have 3 or 4 major bodies of stuff from the 20s now, which we didn't have before. Infinite Intelligence, Tiffin Lectures, this, and In God's Hand also. And each of these 3 are, I'll leave In God's Hand out, it's kind of its own case, but they're very different from each other, actually. And they cover very different subject matters. Infinite Intelligence is dealing with a different subject matter than all of this, but look at how rich it is. Actually, just looking at the series, have you noticed how much ground Baba is covering with these kids? He didn't just bring up an idea and then harp on it for a month and a half. Every lecture, he's bringing in major new topics.
Well, with that word, I think I'm going to stop the recording unless somebody has a new question that they didn't get to and they think would be useful to all of us. I will stop the recording Give me a moment and then we can have a little more discussion.
Before,
The Beloved's Prayer. So if
Okay.
you want to unmute yourselves and join us for this, please do. Then I'll stop the recording and we can hang out and go a while after that. Beloved God.
The God,
help
us all
to love you
to
more
love you
and
love you
more and
more and
more,
more
and more
and
and
more,
and more,
More
and
and
still
till
yet
yet
more,
more,
Still yet more.
till
We
we
become
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 worthy
worthy
of union with you,
with you.
and
And
help
help
us
and help
Help
all
us
us all
to hold
to hold
fast
Hold
fast
fast
to
to
Baba's
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 Dhamma
Taman
until
till
the
the
very
very
end.
end.
Avatar
Avatar
Meher
Meher
Meher Baba
Baba
Ki
Jai.
Jai.
Ooh,
Right. Let
Thank
me-
you.
Thank you, Ward. Thank you, Cassandra, and everyone.
wrong.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everybody, did you find this interesting, this stuff? Because I certainly do.
Very.
Oh, man.
Oh, yeah, fascinating.
But I keep reminding myself that this is an explanation of illusion.
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.